Peace and welcome to an Uncanny Top 10. Today is all about Yoko Kanno. She is a classically trained composer and arranger for Japanese media. She is known mostly for her work in anime and video games. We would love to include Cowboy Bebop music today, but we will be focused on her work in gaming. We will limit it to one per game and not one per franchise. So with no further delay, let's get right into this. Number 10, Nobunagas Ambition 2, the opening theme. Our first up today comes from the third game in the series, but it was released in North America as Nobunagas Ambition 2. This theme comes from the NES version. Coming from one of her earliest soundtracks, and you can tell the hardware was holding her back. The limitations of the sound chip are evident in the early consoles. Talented composers can still produce a decent theme, and I believe this is one of them. It screams NES, and I really like the NES sound. It may not be the best console of the era when it comes to the sound chip, but it has a certain nostalgic feel that I enjoy listening to. Number 9, Ragnarok Online 2, Din Don Dan Dan. This MMORPG was first released in 2012 in Korea and then released in other regions in 2013 with the entire soundtrack by Yoko Kanno. The instrument selection of this one gives it a real Celtic feel. It's not your typical Yoko track, but that just shows her versatility, and we like variation. As you heard, this is not a chiptune, so she was not limited by the hardware, and it really let her do her thing. Later on in the track, there are some slight background vocals. I can't really make out what they are saying, but it doesn't affect my opinion on the music. Number 8, Nobunaga's Ambition, Lord of Darkness, the option menu theme. The fourth game in the Nobunaga's Ambition series, but only the third one released in English. Released in 1994 in North America and for many different consoles, including the Sega Genesis, the NES, and the version of the theme we chose for the SNES. It definitely has the Super Nintendo feel. I can hear some Final Fantasy or maybe some Chrono Trigger in this theme, and those are two fantastic soundtracks to be compared with. This theme doesn't have your typical vibe for a war game because it almost has an uplifting feel. Coming from Yoko, it's not a huge surprise. She has a way of creating themes that are not only uplifting, but also give a certain feel of nostalgia. Number 7. Naple Tail, Cecil's Garden. Naple Tail is a 2.5D platform game for the Sega Dreamcast, released only in Japan on October 19th of the year 2000. The entire soundtrack for this game was composed by Yoko. This particular theme gives off almost a lullaby feel, and it might be a good theme to have a nap to. This soundtrack has many nice themes to listen to. It wasn't the easiest to narrow down, but the calm nature of this theme put it slightly above the rest, at least in my opinion. Some people may not have heard about this game considering it was only released in Japan, but if you like Yoko's music, then we do recommend giving this soundtrack a listen. Number 6. Uncharted Waters, Other Port. So this game was released on MSX and NES in 1991, as well as the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo in 1992. We went with the Super Nintendo version of the theme, but we will at least let you hear the Genesis version. We had it narrowed down to a few themes on this soundtrack, including the main menu theme as well as one titled Abroad in the Tropical Area. However, we went with the Other Port theme because of the overall feel. It's difficult to classify chiptunes under an exact genre. There are no lyrics and there are no instruments to help us narrow it down. But this one just has a certain feel that we enjoy listening to. It's a bit bouncy and has a nice little groove. Number 5. Nobunaga's Ambition, Tale of the Conqueror, Beyond the Auspicious Clouds. Coming from the 5th game in the series and released in 1992 for PC 98 with many ports following, including the Super Famicom, Sega Mega Drive, and even the Sega Mega CD. This game did not see an English release. So while doing some research on this game and its soundtrack, I came across this box set. It's a 14 CD set that comes with music from various Nobunaga games. It's a little bit expensive, but it's rare and full of fantastic music. If I had the money for it, I would totally buy it. On disc 4 and track number 4, you will find this theme, one of my all-time favorites by Yoko. It's quite relaxing and I really enjoy the flute. In my opinion, there are 2 things that Yoko does wonderfully. It's the piano and the flute. And this theme really lets you hear why I think that. I highly recommend it. Number 4. Uncharted Waters 2, New Horizons, Mast in the Mist. Coming from the Uncharted Waters sequel, this game took everything and improved on it, including the music. In my opinion, I prefer the soundtrack to New Horizons over the original. We showcased the Super Nintendo version, but here is the Sega Genesis version. This is another entry that has a soundtrack that I would totally buy if it wasn't so expensive. I love the music, but it's a little bit out of my price range for a single CD. It's a very calming track, and like we said in the last entry, Yoko is a master of the piano, and this theme showcases exactly that. We have talked about this theme before, and as we stated last time, the version of this theme that you can find on the Sega Saturn or the Sony PlayStation is by far our favorite. It removes the limitations of the hardware and is not a chiptune. It's good old Red Book audio, and we will play it for you now. Number 3, Indo Way of the Ninja, Wilderness of Dreams. Indo was originally released on various home computers in Japan. It received a port to the Super Famicom and Super Nintendo in 1991 and 1993 respectively. So we did cheat a little bit on this one because it's not arranged or composed by Yoko, but that is her on the piano. And for that reason, we allowed it. This is one of my favorite RPGs of the 16-bit era. It may be considered a little bit slow by some, but it's one of the most in-depth RPGs of its time. You can travel across the entire country of Japan as a Ronin, taking random jobs to spy or sabotage, as well as getting hired by daimyo to fight in their wars against neighboring provinces. Then, you add on top of that, music like this. It makes for a very memorable experience. Number 2, Nobunaga's Ambition, Tenshoki, the Forgotten Hero theme, the piano version. Another Nobunaga's Ambition game. When she has done so much music for this franchise, it's hard not to include this many entries from the series. Released in 1994 for PC 98, this soundtrack is good all the way through. Usually there are a few themes that we have it narrowed down to, but with this one, it was basically the entire soundtrack. We chose this theme because of the feel. Sometimes it's not about how intricate or complicated the music is, but just how we feel about it. Music sparks an emotion, and sometimes you just have to go with your feelings. Trust your gut, and that's exactly what we did here. This is another theme where Yoko shows off her talent on the piano. It's only about 2 minutes long, but what a sweet 2 minutes it is. Number 1, Nobunaga's Ambition, the Overture. So our top spot today comes from many different Nobunaga games. The first one I heard it on was the NES game, It appeared during the opening and was quite short. However, you can also find it on the Super Nintendo and many other systems. Here, for example, is what it sounds like on the Sega Genesis. And before we move on, I would also like to play the Super Nintendo version. So we went with this theme as our overall favorite for a few reasons. For one, as we stated, it's in many different games. It's a mainstay of the franchise. And for two, it is quite memorable. I can still remember the very first time I turned on Nobunagas Ambition and heard this theme. It has stuck with me for many years. It's like an anthem-style beat. The trumpets are announcing the arrival of someone in power. I could hear this at a Renaissance festival when the king shows up, or maybe at the beginning of a joust right before the knights are being introduced. It doesn't have a piano or any flutes like a lot of Yoko tracks do, but like we always say, we like variation. Different spices make for a delicious meal, and Yoko knows how to cook up some gems. So there you have our top 10 favorite Yoko tracks. We would have loved to include more of her music, but we had to limit it to games only. With that being said, her catalog contains a lot of really great music. If you haven't heard much of her, we hope you learned something about her. She is very talented and can play the piano like a boss. Our next top 10 will be horror themes. It is October, and that means Halloween is here. So any theme that is spooky will qualify. Last but not least, like always, we gotta give a shout out to gold level patrons. Bear Sonam, Quantum X, Mr. Chris Hayes, and of course Dimitri. I am ICC, thanks for watching, see ya Space Cowboy.